I'm sitting here with Robert. Robert has a very interesting story to share that I think will be of amazing benefit to the listeners. Robert, thank you very much for being part of this program. Can you share with our listeners your story, starting with what you were thinking, what was going through your mind when you contacted me originally?
Well, when I originally called you, I was having pretty bad experiences, recurring experiences with anxiety that I was not able to conquer on my own. Every time that I would go into a public speaking type event, I would have more anxiety, it seemed, than I had the time before, because I would take the anxiety of not performing the last time plus the anxiety of just the actual event, and it would continue to multiply more and more and more. So when I contacted you, I felt I was at a breaking point, and I just absolutely had to do something. I had to change what I felt was the cycle and figure out some sort of solution.
So you were in a position that necessitated your doing a lot of public speaking?
Right. Well, it wasn't as though I did public speaking every week or every month. It would come about, say, every 2 months, every 3 months, which was actually more of a problem. I had more time to let the anxiety build up, and it would build up within me. So by the time that I went to do the public speaking event, I was so keyed up. So I had so much anxiety that it was extremely difficult to perform in the way that I wanted to.
What did the anxiety feel like?
Well, it was overwhelming. I mean, it comes from like my like core, and it's interesting. I would feel comfortable. Let's say I was going to my company to public speak, and I had to speak in a boardroom. I would feel comfortable in my car. I would feel comfortable driving down, going into the building, getting into my office. But as I would approach the boardroom, I would go into a spiraling effect that would intensify as I got closer to the boardroom, to the point there were times when I literally didn't know if I was going to be able to public speak at all once I got in the room. The interesting thing was my way of dealing with it personally before I talked with you was to just continue attacking it. You know, I would never run. That was the thing. I had all these different mechanisms that I would come up with to try to pull me away from having to do an event that I felt would be very bad. But if I was ever put in a position where I had to public speak and it was going to be a scenario that I didn't like, I would never run from it. I would always go for it and put myself in the arena, let's say. And there were times when it was very bad. It was very embarrassing. It was humiliating because I could not speak the way that I wanted to.
Were you experiencing physical symptoms?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, my hands would tremble. I would sweat a bit. And without question, my voice would shake dramatically at some points. And see, the interesting thing is, you know, people that just saw me 5 minutes before, they came by my office or saw me walk in, would see me completely calm. And then I would go into a boardroom or have to go do some sort of public speaking, and I would go into what I called, as I said earlier, the spiral effect, and it would just spiral out of control. So to the point that I was public speaking at my company, it could be pretty devastating because people, of course, would come up afterwards and say, what happened? Where did you go from being fine when I saw you a moment ago to having such difficulty in the room?
You mean people would actually be able to observe the anxiety?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was not only in my head. The issue and the problem that I've, resolved did come from within me, but I would take it so far that I would have physical symptoms that people within the room would absolutely notice. There's no doubt.
What was the thinking that was the component of your anxiety? What were the thoughts going through your mind when you were experiencing the panic?
For me, it was this reoccurring discouragement, depression of not being able to beat it, not being able to figure out a way to conquer this. And I also have a bit of perfection that has always plagued me as well. And it's interesting. The things that we've talked about have helped me kind of put those into categories where I can kind of downplay those and see more of perhaps the logic than I used to. But the problem would be I would take it into a negative, into like a negative spin, and that's all I would hear in my head was, oh, you're going to try to do this again, you're going to fail, everybody's going to see that you're having trouble public speaking, it's just the same old cycle, you can't get past it, why did you think you could do it this time, what makes this any different? And the spiral would just basically take over.
And what was the turning point that made you say you had to get some help?
I started with a new company, and all I had to do was just go in. I mean, I had gone through the interview process and had done great, and this was very typical of me. I do real well in small groups or one-on-one, so I could make it through the interview process. I'm a salesperson. I could go through the sales process, but public speaking in a group of say 15 to 20 is where I really, really have a hard time. Speaking in front of groups of 200 to 300, believe it or not, was not a problem because I felt very disassociated with the audience. I felt the distance, but it was something about bringing 15 people in a room all together where everything is quiet and now, okay, I've got to speak right now and perform. I would bring so much performance anxiety into that. I would put all of these huge hurdles, all this baggage I would take in that I had to be perfect, that I had to speak well, that I wasn't going to be nervous this time. And the turning point and why I contacted you was I had gone into a company and all I had to do was go in and basically introduce myself and say what I had done and where I had come from. And it was really, really tough to get through it. And I thought, all right, I've got to call somebody and find somebody that can help me understand why I can do this at my house alone. I can certainly introduce myself and say who I am and talk about what I've done, but you put me in a group of 15 people, and many times I would have almost an anxiety attack at some points to try to get through it.
So in a nutshell, you would say that your problem was how severe in terms of its overall impact?
It was extremely, because you can't operate and try to avoid ever public speaking in situations that make you nervous. I mean, as I mentioned, mine was inconsistent. Sometimes I would public speak very well. I would get a bit of a confidence level going, and then I would be presented with perhaps 15 people in a room. I would feel a bit of hostility, and I absolutely could not do it. So I would think to myself, all right, I've put together these avoidance techniques and how I can avoid scenarios that I don't like, scenarios that I don't think I'll do well with. Realistically, how long can you do that? You can't do that. You can't control the entire environment. You can't control your entire work scenario or even your social scenario, people coming over or getting together with family. There's going to be times that you have to be put in a situation that's going to make you uncomfortable. So I felt I have to address the issue and not the environment or the scenario that I don't like. I have to address the issue.
Where would you say that you are at presently with this problem?
I feel very comfortable in getting through it now, as opposed to what I used to. I categorize things, and I think about things from much more of a logical standpoint. If you talk with anybody that doesn't have any social anxiety problems or have never even dealt with it, it's funny because they'll be like, well, what's the problem? Just go in and talk, or whatever the issue may be. All you have to do is go in and do it. You can do it. But to the person that suffers from it, it's just overwhelming to have to do it. So where I'm at right now is a lot of that logic that I would hear from my friends and family members that would say, look, I know you can do this. Why are you even thinking that you can't? A lot of that logic has been accepted by me, which is where it needed to be accepted. And now I feel more comfortable in going in and speaking, introducing myself.